inflation around the world is caused by certain factors, and we'll see how ours match those or differ from those. But generally speaking, if inflation is going to be good, if you can put it like that, then it won't be into double digits. Maybe that means it gives you up from 1 to 9% inflation rate. But here we are at 19.64. I'm done with my own economics. Let me ask the experts. Let me start with Dr. Muda Yusuf remotely. Dr. Yusuf, double-digit inflation, we are not a stranger to that, but as high as 19.64%, as we are told. Give me your economic viewpoint on how bad this is. Is it a tragedy, or is it, we can fix it?
Thank you, Uncle Yori. Well, this is an extremely disturbing situation. Very, very troubling, because we have not seen this kind of galloping inflation in a very long time. There are complaints all over. There are pains being experienced, either at the level of the citizens or at the level of businesses. In reality, the figure of 19.64% inflation rate is even grossly understating the severity of the situation. Because by this figure, we are assuming that between last year and now, average prices have moved only by 20%.
That's right. That's right.
But if you look at the practical experience that we are going through, particularly if you take into account the basket of goods that the average Nigerian consumes, we're talking of inflation that is between 50 to 100% in the last 1 year. What that means is that for most of the goods that the average Nigerian consumes, in some cases, prices have doubled. In some cases, prices have gone up by as high as 50%. So talking about 19.6%, even to demand on the street, is still understating the matter. Take the price of food, for instance. Whether you are talking of garri, you are talking of beans, you are talking of palm oil, in many of these instances, prices have doubled. Take the prices of even energy. Just like cooking gas. Cooking gas today is over 10,000 naira. These are basic things. And for those who have medical conditions, talk to them.
Oh.
They will tell you what is happening to the prices of pharmaceutical products. They're not talking about 20% increase. So it's a very, very serious matter.
Indeed.
And of course, there are all manner of factors. I heard you talk about global factors, but there are also domestic factors.
Okay.
There are factors that are also as a result of our own making.
You know, I'm going to come back to you.
That's worsened the global issues.
Okay. Dr. Yusuf, thank you very much. I'm going to come back to you for more on what you've just said, that whereas there are global factors, generally speaking, so that what affects you is going to affect your neighbor, talking about countries now. What you've just said, we'll come back to it, and I want to bring that aspect of the conversation to Mr. Yede Jikadi. So he was just talking about our own factors locally. You hear about, he touched on that a bit, you hear about food inflation, for instance. Could you talk to us about our own factors? Because really, I was going to ask the question somewhere along the line, is there something that we ourselves are not doing right? In other words, in a country where, jocularly speaking, people will blame Buhari if there's too much rain. You know, people will blame Buhari if it's too dry. This one, can anybody legitimately blame the administration in power?
Well, we have a lot of factors, as Dr. Lawa said, apart from the global factors. We've been in this for quite a while. The last 1 year has been quite difficult. And the implication is that if you have 1,000 naira 12 months ago, the value of that 1,000 naira is about 20% off. So technically, if you have kept your 1,000 naira 1 year ago, you are holding 800.
Exactly.
But that's even making it look good. From what he has said, we probably, if you review the basket which is used to compete inflation, if you review it, make a little adjustment here and then, you discover that indeed inflation rate may be as high as 60% or thereabouts. Some analysts put it at 40% or thereabouts. The reality is that if you're earning 10,000 naira last year, the value of your real income is coming close to less than 20% of what you're earning. So if you're unfortunate not to have a pay rise at this time, you are worse off. You are poorer than you were last year. That's fundamental. Then how does it affect the living condition of the people? That means the things they can buy now, they have reduced considerably. If you're able to spend 10 naira on food before, you can only afford 8 naira or less. So what are the factors that have contributed to this very terrible situation? You begin to talk about government policies, not just now. There's a build up to this. How did we allow supply of essential items to nosedive to this point? How did we allow the cost of production to be this high? We have a lot of factors. One of them is that we are not producing. And why are we not producing? We are not producing because the factors that will hit production are not there. We are talking about infrastructure. The more we do, the less we have. We are talking about insecurity. We are talking about food inflation. Food inflation cannot be adequately addressed until you resolve the the insecurity problem. Nobody goes to farm where you know a bandit is lurking around the corner to kidnap you or take you to hiding. So these are the factors.
And all of this leads to the fact that you are not producing.
We can't produce in an environment of chaos, in an environment of insecurity, in an environment of high uncertainty.
Well, if you're not producing, and let me go back to Dr. Yusuf. I think I've heard it said once that one way of looking at inflation again is is it? Did they say too much money chasing too few goods, and therefore there is inflation? I don't know whether that is relevant in this context here, but just looking at the example of insecurity in the land, farmers can't do their work, so food is not where it needs to be. Talk to me about aspects domestically that you sort of broached earlier that are fueling this inflation.
Now, I agree with my colleague, Kayode. The issue is that we have what we call structural factors. Structural factors are factors that impact on productivity and competitiveness of production. So within the structural factors, you will situate things like issues of power, failure of the public power supply. You know how many times we have had the collapse of national grid this year. That's never been that bad. You have the issues of transportation, logistics, because even if we produce, you have to get it across to the market. So the challenge of connectivity between the farming locations and the market is also an issue. It impacts on production. But outside the structural factors, there are also policy factors. And one of the areas of policy issues is the exchange rate. Across all segments of this economy, there's a lot of complaints, a lot of anguish around the depreciation of the currency. Today, we are talking of a currency of almost at about 650 naira to the dollar. That's the time it got to 700 naira to the dollar. These things have very severe implications for inflation. And as an oil-producing country, this is the time we should be having a very strong currency. This is the time that our reserve should be overflowing. That is what is happening to all other oil-producing countries. because they are taking advantage of the high oil price. So when we even talk about global conditions, we should even be benefiting from the global developments because oil price has gone up. The last time we had this situation, you remember the Gulf War period? We knew how much we gained from the high oil price. Look at what is happening to other countries. Saudi Aramco, look at the kind of profit they are making. Even in Europe, they are talking about prosperity tax for oil companies. So as a country and as an oil-producing country, it's a tragedy that we are having this kind of foreign exchange crisis.
Indeed. One moment, please, Dr. Yusuf.
At the heart of this is also the foreign exchange problem.
Exactly.
You have the depreciation of the foreign exchange. You have the scarcity of foreign exchange. Talk to most manufacturers. They can't even get the foreign exchange to procure their raw materials. No matter what percentage of your input is imported, if you can't get it, you cannot have a product. So the foreign exchange is an issue, and it's a policy issue. Okay. It's a domestic problem.